Radar screens lit up across the Middle East within minutes. Bright tracks appeared over Iranian territory and began moving west. The number climbed quickly, dozens, then more than 100. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and attack drones rising into the night. Several of those tracks were heading toward one specific location in Israel's southern desert, Nevatim Air Base. Located deep inside the Negev. This installation houses some of Israel's most advanced aircraft, including F-35 stealth fighters. When Iran launched its unprecedented barrage, Nevatim instantly became one of the most strategically important targets in the region. If you clicked because you heard claims about an Iranian missile strike on Nevatim, you are exactly where you should be. Yet something about this story refuses to settle. Israel says nearly every incoming weapon was intercepted. Iranian officials insist their missiles reached key military targets. Both sides sound confident. Both sides claim success. So what actually happened that night? Before diving deeper, drop a comment telling you where you're watching from. Conversations from around the world often reveal how stories like this are interpreted differently. Because the more investigators examine the attack, the stranger the picture becomes. Nevatim Air Base is not just another runway in the desert. From satellite view, the base spreads across a wide patch of pale sand. Long concrete runways slice across the landscape. Reinforced hangars sit in precise rows. Hardened shelters protect aircraft built for some of the most advanced combat missions on Earth. Among them are Israel's F-35 fighter jets. That alone makes Nevatim strategically critical. Protecting it has been a priority for Israeli military planners for years, which is why Israel built one of the most sophisticated missile defense networks ever deployed. The system operates in layers. Arrow interceptors target long-range ballistic missiles high above the atmosphere. David Sling engages threats descending toward Israeli territory. Closer to the ground, Iron Dome destroys rockets and short-range projectiles before they reach cities or bases. On paper, the shield appears nearly impenetrable. So when Iran launched its massive barrage, many analysts assumed the defenses would hold. Israeli officials soon reinforced that assumption. Early statements described the operation as largely unsuccessful. According to those reports, the overwhelming majority of incoming threats were intercepted before reaching Israeli territory. Allied forces reportedly helped as well. American and British assets operating in the region assisted with intercepting parts of the barrage. The narrative sounded simple: a massive attack, a powerful defense, minimal damage. But military observers quickly noticed something unusual. Hundreds of airborne threats appearing at once create a mathematical challenge for any missile defense system. Interceptors must launch quickly. Radar must track everything perfectly. Command centers must prioritize targets within seconds. And when the sky fills with missiles, even advanced defenses face pressure. Imagine the night over the Negev desert. Interceptors streak upward. Bright flashes appear high in the atmosphere. Fragments of destroyed missiles scatter across the sky. In that kind of chaos, even a small gap can matter. Then the satellite images appeared. Commercial imaging companies captured photographs of Nevatim the following morning. Analysts began examining them carefully. Some observers noticed dark marks inside sections of the base. Not massive destruction, but something unusual, something that looked suspiciously like impact points. And that is where the story begins to split. Because from that moment forward, Iran and Israel started telling two completely different versions of what happened that night. Within hours of the attack, two completely different stories began spreading across the world. Tehran described the operation as a successful retaliation. Iranian officials claimed their missiles struck key Israeli military facilities, including the Nevatim Air Base. According to their statements, the strike demonstrated that Iranian missiles could penetrate Israeli defenses and reach strategic targets. Israeli officials presented a very different picture. Military spokespeople said the attack had been largely neutralized. Interceptors launched across the region, Allied aircraft joined the defense, and the majority of incoming threats were destroyed before reaching Israeli territory. Two narratives emerged almost instantly. One side described precision strikes and successful retaliation. The other described an overwhelming defensive victory. Both cannot be entirely correct. Maps released by defense analysts reveal the scale of the operation. Missiles launched from western Iran traveled roughly 1,000 kilometers across the Middle East before approaching Israeli airspace. On screen, the trajectories form thin lines stretching across a regional map. Several of those lines converge directly over Nevatim Air Base. For Iran, striking Nevatim carries symbolic weight. The base hosts aircraft capable of long-range operations, including stealth fighters believed capable of reaching Iranian territory. Even a limited strike would send a powerful message. But Israel's defense network was built precisely for this type of threat. The system operates in layers. Aero interceptors engage ballistic missiles high above the atmosphere. If something slips past, David's sling engages descending threats. Closer to the ground, Iron Dome destroys rockets and drones before they reach critical infrastructure. On paper, the system sounds nearly perfect. But the real question in warfare is never whether a system works. The real question is how it performs when hundreds of targets appear simultaneously. During the Iranian strike, radar networks would have tracked dozens of objects moving at different speeds and altitudes. Inside command centers, operators made rapid decisions. Which target should be intercepted first? Which threat might be a decoy? Which missile is already too close? These decisions happen in seconds. And that is why analysts began focusing less on official statements and more on independent evidence. The most revealing clues did not come from press conferences. They came from space. Commercial satellites passed over southern Israel shortly after the attack. High-resolution images of Nevatim Air Base quickly circulated among open-source intelligence communities, where analysts study military activity using publicly available data. At first glance, the base appeared calm. Runways remained intact. Hangars stood upright. No large fires burned across the desert installation. But careful observers noticed something unusual. Zooming into certain sections of the base revealed several dark circular marks scattered across open areas. These shapes were small, irregular, and clearly different from the surrounding terrain. They looked suspiciously like impact points. A side-by-side satellite comparison makes the change easier to see. One image from earlier weeks shows smooth desert ground. Another, taken after the strike, shows faint, dark scars in several locations. Nothing catastrophic, yet something had clearly struck the ground. That discovery triggered immediate debate. Some analysts argued the marks could simply be falling debris. When interceptors destroy ballistic missiles high in the sky, fragments scatter across wide areas. Pieces of metal traveling at extreme speed can easily scar the desert floor. But another group of observers pointed to a troubling detail. Several marks appeared inside the base perimeter. Debris rarely falls that neatly, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. At least one projectile may have reached the ground near Nevatim. Understanding that possibility requires looking at the weapons involved. Ballistic missiles do not travel like ordinary rockets. After launch, many climb high above the atmosphere before descending toward Earth at hypersonic speed. During the final phase of flight, some modern missiles can adjust their path slightly. Even small adjustments make interception harder, especially when many missiles arrive at the same time. Missile defense works through probabilities. Each interceptor carries a chance of success. Launch enough interceptors, and the probability increases dramatically. But when dozens of threats appear simultaneously, the system must prioritize. Which targets are most dangerous? Which ones may be decoys? Which missiles are already heading toward empty terrain? These decisions unfold in seconds. Now imagine hundreds of objects moving across radar screens at once. Interceptors launching upward, bright flashes appearing in the night sky as missiles collide above the Earth. In that environment, defense systems can still perform remarkably well. But perfection becomes mathematically unlikely. And that is why the satellite images sparked so much interest. The marks inside Nevatim do not suggest catastrophic damage. They suggest something more subtle, something between complete success and complete failure. And that gray area raises a deeper question. If even a few missiles slipped through, what does that mean for one of the world's most advanced defense systems? The truth about Nevatim likely lies somewhere between two carefully constructed narratives. Not total destruction, not perfect defense. Something more complicated. Military systems rarely produce clean outcomes, especially when hundreds of missiles appear at once. Even the most advanced air defense networks operate within limits of time, physics, and probability. Israel's defensive architecture functions as a layered shield. The first defensive layer sits far above the atmosphere. There, the aero system attempts to destroy ballistic missiles while they are still descending from space. Interceptions at that altitude keep debris far from cities and military bases. But if a missile survives that first attempt, the threat does not disappear. It simply moves closer to the ground. The next layer is David's sling, designed to intercept medium-range threats as they descend toward Israeli territory. Below that sits Iron Dome, focused on rockets and short-range projectiles approaching cities and military sites. Editors could show a diagram here. 3 defensive layers stacked above Israel, each intercepting threats at different altitudes. On paper, the architecture appears extremely strong. Yet, missile defense is never about guarantees. It is about reducing risk. During the Iranian strike, radar networks likely detected waves of incoming objects at different altitudes. Some traveled along ballistic arcs. Others were slower drones approaching in large numbers. Each object required a decision. Which interceptor should launch first? Which threat must be stopped immediately? Which missile might already be heading toward an empty area? Military planners call this challenge saturation. A defense system may stop most threats, but when dozens arrive simultaneously, the system begins making difficult choices. Which target receives the first interceptor? Which object might be a decoy? Which missile is already too close to intercept? Those decisions happen within seconds, and sometimes seconds are not enough. Satellite imagery suggests something like that may have happened at Nevatim. The marks analysts observed appear limited in size. No destroyed hangars, no large fires. Runways appear mostly intact. If a missile reached the ground, the damage appears relatively small. But strategically, the meaning could be much larger than the crater itself. For Israel, maintaining the image of a nearly flawless defense system is critical. Missile shields do more than intercept weapons. They reassure the public and strengthen deterrence. Admitting even a small penetration can weaken that perception. For Iran, the opposite incentive exists. Tehran benefits from demonstrating that its missiles can reach heavily defended targets deep inside Israeli territory. Even limited success strengthens that message. Which is why both sides emphasize different parts of the same event. Israel highlights interception success. Iran highlights the possibility of impact. Neither statement must be completely false. Both may simply reflect different pieces of the same reality. A massive barrage was launched. Most threats were intercepted, but a few may have slipped through. And if that interpretation is correct, the real significance of the Nevatim strike may not be the damage itself. It may be the message sent across the region. The missiles stopped falling before sunrise. Interceptors faded from the sky. Radar screens slowly cleared. Across southern Israel, military teams began inspecting debris fields and possible impact sites. From a purely physical perspective, the damage appeared limited. Nevatim Air Base continued operating. Runways remained functional. Aircraft shelters remained standing. Life inside the base moved forward. But the real battlefield may never have been the runway. It may have been the story that followed. The most important battle may not have taken place in the sky. It began afterward. In official statements, press briefings, and carefully released images. Because modern warfare unfolds in 2 arenas at once: the battlefield and the narrative. Iran wanted to demonstrate reach. Launching a direct strike from its own territory showed that Israeli military sites were not beyond its range. Israel wanted to demonstrate resilience. By intercepting most incoming threats, the country reinforced the credibility of its defensive shield. Both messages serve strategic goals. One emphasizes capability, the other emphasizes protection. Observers across the region are now studying the same question analysts asked when satellite images first appeared. Not whether every missile hit its target, but whether any missile managed to get through. Because if even a small number of projectiles can slip past advanced defenses during a large barrage, the strategic equation begins to change. Missile defense becomes a shield that reduces damage rather than eliminating danger. And deterrence becomes more complicated. Somewhere between total success and total failure lies the most likely reality of the Nevatim strike. A night when one of the world's most advanced air defense networks faced one of the largest missile barrages in modern Middle Eastern history. The physical damage may fade quickly. Runways can be repaired, structures can be reinforced. But the uncertainty surrounding that night will remain much longer. Because long after the missiles disappeared from the sky, another conflict continued. The battle over what the world believes really happened at Nevatim.